Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and make this video pretty short. This video is for the people who know someone who is struggling with borderline personality disorder. Doesn't matter whether you're a parent or a friend or a coworker. There are two very important things to remember. Number one, you may be able to walk away, they can't. So, as overwhelming and confusing and draining as it may seem for you to be around them, it's just as and actually much, much more so for them. And unlike you, who can be present in the mindset as they share what's going on with you for even just a few minutes, and you're done, you need a break. And it's okay to say that you need a break, but there's a difference between needing a break and just trying to do everything you can to get out of there and not coming back. Not even attempting to come back. And worse yet, treating them as though the shared experiences they've provided make them some sort of a monster. It's really, really, really bad. And if you think about it, and you stop and think about it, if you were really to treat just about anyone that way, if you were to be treated that way, that you would be viewed very negatively by anyone. But especially these people, because there are so many people who have chosen to go down that path. And because they've chosen to go down that path, this person has been abandoned over and over and over and over. And that's why this isn't a choice for them. This isn't a problem that medication can solve. This is the way that their brain has formed, because our brains physically store information every time they've been abandoned by someone. It has contributed to their brain forming physically that in that particular way. And now that is the way that their brain works. And the only way that that can change is when people stop leaving them. And it's very, very important. It will help immensely to convince you not to overreact to that overwhelming sensation, and it will help you to regain your sympathy and to come back to them and to work with them if you internalize the fact that they are stuck with this 24/7. They can't get away from it. I can tell you, as someone who suffered from BPD extensively, that even when it backed off, it didn't really back off because I was scared. I was very, very scared every moment that my BPD had backed off, because I never knew when it was going to hit again. And it kind of feels like trying to prepare for something that's about to show up and kill you. And there's nothing you can do to stop it from showing up and trying to kill you. And it feels as though you're powerless to even stop it from killing you. But what other option do you have than to try to fight it? Because otherwise you're just dead. And this is why suicide risk with BPD is so extensive, is because it just never ends. It never ends. So be understanding of that fact. Really internalize that fact. It'll help you a lot to evolve as a person and to help you to be there for them when they need you. And then there is that also being said, that leads into point two. These people are incredibly strong. I mean, people with BPD, we're just ridiculously strong. We may not seem that way, but that's because we're basically Kryptonians in a world formed entirely of kryptonite. That's a really, really good analogy for it, because normal people don't react the same way to kryptonite. They walk around as though there's no particularly big issue with walking around, but for us, we're struggling just to stand up. And it's not that we're weak, it is that we are just leveled by our circumstances, and we continue to try to live despite those circumstances and the effect that they have on us. But that strength to deal with that burden nonstop is a strength beyond any that you're going to achieve yourself. So you may ask, well, how do I help someone who is that strong then if I can't deal with it for longer than that? Well, at the core of all the triggers for BPD, and you'll hear professionals talk about triggers a lot. It's also really confusing for a lot of people because there are so many triggers and don't necessarily, some may not necessarily apply to a different person or may apply in a different way, and they may not even be able to tell you what their triggers are or how they were triggered. So it complicates things, but at the core of most all of these triggers is the fact that we feel like we are not being acknowledged or heard. And one of the best ways that you can deal with this problem, and part of the reason why we sometimes seem to feel abandoned or neglected in circumstances that other people consider to be relatively normal, is that we as a society have gotten really, really bad at acknowledging one another as people. We tend to acknowledge each other more like objects, statistics, characters, resources. But we very rarely actually treat each other like human beings. And I'll give you a few examples. When you're trying to get to know someone, don't ask them about their past. That's getting to know who they were, but that's not getting to know them. And if you use a person's past against them, if you use their past to base your you use their past mistakes, their past obstacles, if you use that to define them as the person that they are now, you're not getting an accurate picture of who they are. You're ignoring them. You may not feel like you're ignoring them, but you are ignoring them actively. And so when you are trying to get to know them, ask them about where they're at and what they're doing and how they're feeling in the present. That's one tip. Another is don't assume that because you know about something they're talking about, that you know anything about what it is that you're talking about with them. Because you may be an expert in BPD, but do you know how it's affecting them? Do you know how they identify it? Do you know how it makes them feel? Do they know how it's making them feel? These are the kinds of questions that are involved in getting to know someone. You need to know how they perceive what you're talking about. there are all kinds of places in my life where the lack of a credible foundation has left me having to form new definitions for common words like family and friends. What makes a friend a friend? What makes family family? What makes a man a man? Well, I mean, these are important definitions. These are important questions to be asking them to get to know them better. Because if you just assume that you speak the same language and their definitions for their words and your definitions for the same words don't match, you're going to miscommunicate. And then they're going to feel like you are not hearing them, that you are not acknowledging them. You're not listening. And that's something you're going to have to acknowledge, is that your objective is not to get to know the disorder. Your objective is not to form a relationship with the psychologist who defined the disorder. Your objective is to develop a relationship with the person that is struggling. And in order to do that, you are going to have to get to know them the way that they have gotten to know themselves. You're gonna have to start from the ground up. And that is a learning style that intimidates a lot of adults. Most adults learn to absorb new information by relating it to old information. And if they can't relate it to old information, then most of the times they'll make assumptions that, okay, this is what they said, but I don't think that that's really the way that it is. I think it's more like this. And they'll end up projecting themselves onto that other person, because it allows them, in projecting themselves onto that other person and using their own experiences and their own definitions, allows them to instantly relate to what that other person they feel is saying. But that is not acknowledging that person. That is not treating them like a person. That is treating them like a mirror. You turn them into a mirror out of convenience to keep you from having to start from scratch. And it's not just BPD. We treat common people this way too. We've just gotten so used to treating people this way and so used to being treated this way that we don't actively think about it. But when you're dealing with something like BPD, you are going to have to consciously, actively be thinking about the ways in which we've been programmed to abandon one another, and the ways we've neglected to learn how to authentically relate to one another. I mean, it's been said for a long time that a huge majority of people here in the United States feel lonely, regardless of the number of relationships that they may have. They still end up feeling lonely, and it's because of the inability to authentically relate. So learn to do that. And that'll be it for this video. I hope you appreciate it. Leave any comments if you are dealing with a particular issue that you would like some insight into. I made it through my recovery about 2 years ago. I started, I had a huge psychological break that had to do with my BPD being so overwhelming that it diverged into PTSD and bipolar and a whole bunch of different things when I was 4. So, I was 33 at the time that I finally made my breakthrough. So, been there. I can actually even tell you what it's like to be dying of a broken heart. My mind simply could not deal with the stress any longer of coping with my disorder alone. So, if it's BPD, I have an insight into it. I guarantee. And like I said, this channel is dedicated to DDD, which is eventually, if that person with BPD makes it far enough, they're going to start to have problems with DDD. In fact, they're already having trouble with DDD. It's very hard for them to identify themselves outside of this disorder, and it's very difficult for them to relate to people who haven't had the disorder, who have been living more of their own life and actually getting out there and doing things. And it's created kind of a wall in terms of their ability to relate and to develop relationships and to be able to grow their core selves. So, like I said, if you're dealing with a particular issue, leave a comment and I will get back to you. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.